All right, so I'm not in today. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go over this handout here. Today you're supposed to be looking at this handout and following the instruction that I'm showing in this video, so you can do part of this handout. Okay, as I said to you on Monday's class, 1.2 is a quite an important aspect for the grade 10 math course. So today's date would have been September 17th. Okay, so here, this paragraph here basically talk about some limitation about why graphing it's not always the best method in terms of solving system of equation. Okay, so you can read that on your own a little bit, but I'm pretty sure during the test and quiz you realize, hey, some of the times it doesn't work well. So on this page here, example 1, solve the following equation for any one variable. Ask yourself which variable is easier to solve. Okay, so basically I'm going to use this one as an example. You could just solve for y equals, and then you will have to rearrange x onto the other side and divide by 2. You can do it this way, or you can do x equal to whatever. Okay, this part here, it's really the whole purpose is for you to look at an equation and see which variable is easier to isolate. Is it easier to isolate x, or is it easier to isolate y? So let's look at this particular example here. And I've previously done this question already. So in this question here, I'm going to choose to isolate x because right now it's only one x. I just need to move this guy to the other side by doing opposite operation. So I subtract 2y from both sides. Now I just have x equals minus 2y plus 5. Okay, so that's what just you need to do here. Now for the next one here, 2x minus y equals 14. So in this case, which one will be easier to solve? Now, personally, I find the y would be a little bit easier to solve. Okay, because yes, it's a minus, but in some ways you can just divide everything by minus 1. So I find it easier that way. So to do that, I subtract a minus 2x on both sides. So now I have minus y equals minus 2x plus 14, the original 14 here. Then I divide everything by minus 1. Really, it's just changing the sign for everything. So this was minus, now it's plus. This was minus 2, now it's plus 2. This was plus 14. You now have minus 1. Okay? So that's an example how if you what you do if you decide to isolate y. Now for the third one here, x or which one to isolate easier? Okay, so personally I find it easier to isolate y. Okay, simply because this is a smaller number. It is a smaller number between 2 and 6. So I'm just going to choose to isolate y. So I will need to move the 6 to the other side. So 6x minus 6x. I subtract 6x on both sides. So now I have 6x on this side here. To get rid of the 2, I'll need to divide every term by 2. So 2 divided by 2, that gives me 1. Minus 6 divided by 2, that gives me minus 3. Plus 14 divided by 2 gives me 7. So that's what I'll get if I isolate y instead. Okay. So by looking at these 3 examples, I'm going to ask you to do this part here, and I will be checking for that. Completion of that for tomorrow's class. Now, Another thing that I would ask you to do is to watch this video is to do the following page. So the following page here, now this is actually kind of showing how to solve these systems of equation. Now, instead of telling you just, if you look on the back page here, in the back page here, they just give you a pair of equations and you just need to be the one picking which one to solve and which one to solve for first and then second. Right now, this one, we're still somewhat guiding you, okay? So the first one here, you have two equations. Now they're telling you to substitute y equals 6x minus 11 into this equation here, and then to solve for x. So let's look at this one here. Now, so when I substitute 6x minus 11, now you plug in a number or a term, you still need to put brackets. So x plus brackets 6x minus 11, because this used to be y. So now since I plug this into take place of a y, you now look like this. The next step, you technically here, it's like the invisible plus 1. You multiply into the 6, so you have a plus 6x. You multiply into a minus 11, you have minus 11. So now you're going to be solving for like terms. X plus 6x gives you 7x. And you're going to move this, so 7x here. The minus 11, you want to move it to the other side, so I have plus 11 on both. Minus 11 plus 11 becomes 0. 3 plus 11, that gives you 14. So I have 7x equals to 14. I want to get rid of the 7, so I divide both sides by 7. So now I have x equals 2. Okay? So this is what I do. This is what I get if I plug in this equation here into y to solve for x. Okay? Now what you are to do, now you substitute the x or y value back into any equation to solve any equation on the pair to solve for the other letter. So if you look back at here, these two equations that originally we start with, this one would be much easier to solve because you're really talking about x plus y. You don't need to do anything to this x here. So that's exactly what I chose to do over here. X plus y equals 3. That was the equation. I'm going to plug in my x equals 2 into it. So I'm going to plug the 2 here. And then I'll subtract 2 on both sides. Now I have y equals 1. Okay? So this is, so the solution for this pair of equations would be x equals 2 and y equals 1. Okay? So make sure you write this down in your notes. Okay? You can pause the video to do that. Now, let's look at this other example here. So they're telling you to substitute x equals y plus 1 into this equation here. Okay? So now you actually need to take this 2 and multiply it into the bracket here. So let's look at this a little bit more carefully. Okay? So when I plug in y plus 1 into x here, when I plugged it into here, so that's why again you have a bracket. So it used to be x. Now we know that x equals y plus 1. So you have a bracket. So now you do distributive property. The 2 will multiply into the y, will give you 2y. The 2 times plus 1, that will give you a plus 2. Okay? So after you multiply into this, you get 2y plus 2. I copy down the 2y here and the 2,6 here because we didn't do anything to it yet, so we're just copying down. Now, after this, we need to gather the like terms. Remember, like terms are things that have same letters, and those letters have the same exponents. So 2y and 2y, they are like terms. So I'm going to gather them together, move the plus 2y here. So now I have 2y plus 2y. The plus 2, I'm going to move back to this side here. So in this case, 2y plus 2y gives me 4y. Now 4y plus 2 equals 6. I just need to move this plus 2 to the other side by subtracting both sides by minus 2. I now have 4y equals 4. 4y equals 4. Then divide both sides by 4 will give me y equals 1. Okay? So by plugging in x equals y plus 1, I'm able to solve y equals 1. Okay? Now, I found y equals 1. Now I'm going to pick one of the equations here to plug y equals 1 in to solve for x. Now, obviously, looking at this will be way easier equation to plug in because they actually nicely isolated to you. Okay? X equals something, and we want x. So, which is exactly what I did here. So, I decide to plug it into this equation here. X equals y plus 2. Y equals 1, so it's here. So, 1 plus 1 gives me 2. So now I have x equals 2 and y equals 1 for this system of equation. Okay? So make sure you have this down. Now, I would ask you to do for homework / classwork, I'm going to ask you to do this question here. Do it this way, same thing as what I showed you in the two previous examples. And I'm going to ask you to do this one here, okay? This one here. Let me explain a little bit in terms of what you're supposed to do. So you're given two equations. The first one, circle the variable, term and operation that you want to isolate in one of the equation. So I'm looking at this right now. This will probably be the easier equation to isolate. Then, my second thing here, isolate chosen variable by doing something on both sides. So in this case, I probably want to isolate, I probably want to isolate x onto, I just want to isolate x. So this basically, you want to isolate from this sentence, rearrange it so that you have your y on this side and you just have x plus something. Same thing here, you're just really, this part is really to show work how you go from here to essentially here, okay? So x plus something. Substitute the expression into the other equation for the variable. So now you have whatever this is, you have to plug this in here, okay? Take the place of x, okay? So you should see 4 bracket, whatever you had earlier, plus 9y equals 21. And for this part here, you're really just to solve for this equation here and find what y is. After you figure out the y, you substitute y into one of these original equations. I probably would use this one. Smaller numbers are always nicer. And then you're just going to solve for, and then you're just going to solve for x at this point, okay? So this is what I'm going to also ask you to do, okay? So tomorrow on Wednesday, when I come back, I would be checking, let me be very clear, I will be checking this thing. I will be checking this page, but well, these two, I would also expect to see notes that you can make from here, okay? As well as this question here, okay? So I hope this is clear, okay? And we will go over, if you still need more practice, we can do that more on Wednesday's class. But that's what I would expect you to do from watching this video, okay? Have a good day. I'll see you on Wednesday.